This week's Tulsa King has a long scene in the middle that is best explained by equating it with the character played by Jon Stewart in Half-Baked. Ever watch Sylvester Stallone in a role as a mob boss while high on marijuana? Dwight Manfredi goes completely bonkers during a long drive from Tulsa to a secluded wind farm situated on tribal territory. He becomes quite perplexed over the band Phish's name and goes on a long diatribe accusing Canned Heat of damaging his hearing and saying that everyone holds other people accountable for their own shortcomings as, it's all a pie of lies. Generally speaking, he annoys Bodhi while amusing his boys, Mitch and Tyson. Entertains the hell out of his boys Mitch and Tyson while irritating Bodhi, a stoner veteran who's beyond this kind of display by now. There are two reasons why this scene is charming. 1. It implies quite strongly what mental state is ideal for seeing Tulsa King. Actually, I'm speculating. Secondly, it occurs in the midst of an episode that revolves around the several criminal factions targeting Dwight, ranging from Tulsa, Kansas City, and New York. To be honest, Tulsa King could be better off playing. Stallone plays a genial guy caught up in a web of tense intrigue. We'll start by going over each player, starting with KC head coach Bill Bevilacqua, whose made guy right-hand man was assassinated by Dwight's forces last week after being deceived. He is enraged, not just at Dwight but also at Chicky Invernizzi, his supervisor in New York, whom he holds responsible for the flawed intelligence that resulted in the failed hit on Dwight, and he is unable to give the man a dignified funeral without triggering a murder inquiry. Chicky, who has a tendency to take things personally, makes up for being taken advantage of by Bevilacqua by essentially boasting that he killed his father, the family's former employer. It is safe to say that this is a huge no-no, but at least his soldiers are polite enough not to ask him directly about it. Nevertheless, thinking the bossman can no longer be trusted, the possible double agents in Dwight's group are coping with the consequences of their choice in Tulsa. Underboss Goody stabbed Bevilacqua's hitman in the back last week because he decided to stick with Dwight. The front, technically, but you get the idea. He is now the epitome of paranoia, constantly worrying about who will beat him first, a vindictive Bill or an enraged Chicky, who suggested Goody for the attempted murder and was subsequently chastised by Bill. After passing him too many times, he ends up poking his revolver into the mouth of an Uber Eats driver. Meanwhile, Armand discovers he has deeper feelings than he anticipated for cannabis tycoon Kel Thresher. He tells the man that Dwight is out of town in wind turbine country after taking another large sum of money from him. Armand knows he's been duped when Cal admits that it's always a good idea to know what the competition is up to. As luck would have it, Thresher submits a rival bid the same afternoon that Dwight is supposed to meet with the owner. Still, this wouldn't be Tulsa King if he couldn't use diplomacy to ultimately obtain what he desired. But Thresher has larger fish to fry than losing out to Dwight on the bidding war. He requests to have the plug removed after learning that Jackie, Rich Ting, the Chinese stakeholder in his marijuana farm, has been covertly growing heroin inside the massive cannabis grow. Following a few too many demands, Jackie decides to move the negotiations forward by killing two of the trafficked Chinese immigrants working as forced labor on the farm in front of Dwight. They were supposed to face some sort of punishment for their theft. Jackie also declares that the poppies will remain. Gunfire muffles Cal's harsh words about knowing different judges and attorneys general, making it seem less impressive. Dwight and his group also have to deal with the other kind of family. Dwight's sister recognizes almost immediately that he is up against it and accurately tells him that he would definitely face consequences, probably from those close to him, for starting a rebellion and b. killing one of his adversaries. I can't help but wonder if it's the reason we get a very sentimental sequence involving Tyson and his hard-working father, the plumber, who is the early parts of the episode, when Tyson and Bodhi are still recuperating from the disposal of the would-be hitman's body hours earlier, are the only real downfall. With his eyes fixed on the blood on his sleeve, Tyson appears confused and disoriented. Bodhi makes a threat to end his business relationship with Dwight and step down completely. I understand, and I believe it's a terrific concept to demonstrate what happens to a person who lives a life of crime, murder crime, not drug crime. These individuals were all involved in a shootout that resulted in the deaths of an entire outlaw biker gang, unless I'm seriously misremembering things. You'd think that by now, they would have experienced their own protracted, dark night of the soul over this. Bodhi and Tyson both turn around, with Bodhi crunching the figures to make their hydroponic farm run on wind power and Tyson giving the crew the motivational lecture that Dwight is sick of giving. And they kind of, come back around. What if you were a 75-year-old guy who a bunch of young people thought was really cool, is Tulsa King's fundamental fantasy. The fantasy will end once they cease believing that he's awesome. It is quite unlikely that Dwight and his millennial sidekicks will ever have a deep and permanent falling out, just as it is unlikely that he will die and Garrett Hedlund will take center stage rather than Sylvester Stallone. Surrogate children and grandchildren encircle Dwight, who they find endearing as he tells stories about the Fillmore East and makes comments about their music being noise. That kind of desire fulfillment makes superheroes look bad in the eyes of certain people.